All right, everybody, let's get started. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. Welcome to the Daily Planet Theater. My name is Chris. I'm your host and curator for the theater here inside the museum. And today we have a very special program for you because, well, I should back up. Here at the Museum of Natural Sciences, not only are we a collection of things from the natural world that you can come visit, see up close, and learn more about, but we're an active research institution. We have people who work here who every day are doing science to help us learn more about what is going on in nature and in the natural world. Today, one of our research scientists is going to share research that he just published yesterday. So this is brand new knowledge added through the techniques of science and done right here at the museum between him and his colleagues. Dr. Roland Kays is the head of the Biodiversity Research Lab here at the museum and a professor at North Carolina State University. He's an expert on mammals, and it seems he's an expert on more than just the wild kind now. He's also an expert on some of the mammals that hang out in our own homes. So please put your hands together for Dr. Roland Kays.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. And thanks, everyone, for coming down here to the museum, and those that are on the live stream for tuning in wherever you are secluding yourselves. This is exciting for me because this is a project that we've been working on for a long time, and we finally get to present the final results. And hopefully some of you out there may have participated. We had a lot of citizen scientists help us track their cats, and this is a result from that work. So it's not only me and some other scientists, but it's hundreds of citizen volunteers and their pets that also helped out. And so what I'm talking about today is cats, right? We know that cats are killers, and we want to try to figure out what's the impact of that. And, you know, cats are really awesome. We love cats. I like cats. I'm not a cat hater. Cats are very important to lots of people. We've had a long history with cats. Whether cats like us or not, sometimes it's kind of hard to tell, right? They seem to have an attitude sometimes. But we know that cats like birds, right? Cats love to hunt birds. They like to hunt mice. They like to hunt lizards, any sort of small prey, they go after them. And that's part of why we domesticated cats in the first place, of course, is they helped us get rid of pests in our granaries and in our farms and things like that. But now we don't have as much problem with those pests, but these cats still have that instinct to go hunt stuff. We know that we have some idea that this might be a problem. For example, this is a paper that just came out about birds in North America, and they found that we have lost a lot of the bird population in the country over since 1970, a big decline in birds, and some of that they think might be the result of cats. Although sometimes it's kind of hard to tell, but there certainly has been a decline in birds, and some of these other species are having a problem too. So when we know that in some places there are lots of cats, right? There are people who feed cats outdoors, there are feral cats, and you can imagine if there's this many cats in some places, if you're a bird, that's going to probably be a problem. And so our research question really was, what is the ecological impact of cats on their prey? And now the way that scientists like to do this type of work is they do an experiment, right? So let's get a bunch of cats and put them in some place and see what happens to the prey. Or let's go someplace and take away all the cats and see what happens to the prey. But that's not a very easy experiment to do, right? We can't just go dump a bunch of cats into the forest somewhere and see what happens to all the mice and birds. And people aren't going to be very happy if we suddenly go and start scooping up all their cats. So we wanted to find an alternative way to ask the same question. And so our key thing was to try to see, can we compare what cats are doing with what native predators do? Because we know native predators can have an impact on their prey, and that's kind of the normal thing, right? So are cats less than normal, equal to normal, or worse than normal, more than normal in terms of their ecological impact? That was kind of our goal. And so to do this, we needed really two types of information. One is how much do they kill? And then the other is how much space do they use? Over what area are they doing that killing? And so we worked with citizen scientists on this project to get the answers to both these questions. We asked them to keep track of what prey are brought home. So you can see, often cats bring prey home. We know that they don't bring everything home, and there's been some other studies that allow us to make an adjustment factor, saying, for every cat they brought home, every animal they brought home, there's probably some others that they didn't bring home. And then we worked with them to track their cat. So I've got one of the tracking devices we used. It was an inexpensive little GPS tracker that we would put on a harness on the cats and let them do their thing. And then we would go back and get the unit. This is Troy Perkins. She's was an undergrad at NC State who helped us on this project, putting a tag on a cat. And so this was our basic idea. Where do they go? What are they eating? And then we needed a wild comparison, right? And so we worked with the jungle cat, and we didn't actually get to do the work, but luckily this animal has been well studied, and it makes a good comparison because it's about the same size as a house cat. You can see it looks a lot like a house cat, so it's a pretty good wild analog to the house cat. And it had been studied in terms of what it eats and in terms of how much space it used, so we could make that comparison. And what we found was that this is how many prey per month cats would eat. And we've kind of broken this up into lazy cat and active cat, because there's a lot of variation, right? Anyone who has cats or has had different cats knows some cats, especially the young ones, are really active hunters. They might be bringing back, 10, 12, 15, even more prey a month. Whereas other cats are pretty lazy. Every once in a while they bring something home, but not nearly as often. So we thought, well, let's work through these two examples. Meanwhile, the jungle cat, right, he doesn't get a bowl full of kitty food every day. He's got to hunt for a living. So they hunt a lot, as you would expect. And on average, that works out to 390 prey, the size of a mouse, that they would be eating. I was able to put this all in terms of like how many calories are in a mouse. And so this is what they ate. So that's the first answer to the question. And we were able to obtain this data working with colleagues all around the world. So it wasn't just here in North Carolina or North America. We worked in the United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand with colleagues who started cat tracking projects there. They got exactly the same cat tracker units. We did everything exactly the same methodology, so we have this global comparison. In total, we were able to track 925 cats across 6 countries. So this is one of the biggest studies, actually, of animal movement, of any kind of animal, in the world. And so here you can see the map. These dots are showing where we had different animals tracked. And you can go to our website at cattracker.org and see these tracks. And you can click on the picture, you can see the cat, and then you can see where that animal went when we were tracking them. And you can see, generally, these maps, they're not going very far. Right? You can kind of see, they're using the area around their house and maybe some of their neighbors' houses. And this is what we found on average, was that these cats were not moving very far. So this is a graph of cat home range size, and I'll explain to you a little bit how to read it. What it's showing you on the y-axis that goes up the side, there it is, that's how big the home range was in hectares. And to get a little kind of a feel for that, the average was 3.6 hectares, which is from the cat owner's from their house about 100 meters or 100 yards radius around there. So most cats were going about 100 yards, meters, it's about the same, from their house. They were staying within that area. And what this is showing you, so this is the number of cats on the x-axis along the bottom, and you can see most cats were less than 5. But then there were some that were 10, 15, 20. It starts at, a couple that were 35 to 40. So we had, I think, 1 cat each up in that. Those guys had some pretty big home ranges. We only had 3 cats that were greater than a kilometer squared. So they were real outliers. There was greater than that would be 100 hectares. So they're kind of off this chart. So again, most cats really small, some cats a little bit bigger. Here's one of the guys. This was, I think, our largest home range. This was a cat from Australia, and you can see moving over quite a large area, not just around their house. This is another funny one from the UK that would walk on the road back and forth between these 2 little villages. So we don't know exactly what it was doing. There's all sorts of secrets still out there about these cats, but you could see he would kind of walk back and forth, so he ended up having a pretty big home range. But most of them were not this big. So now we can add that and say, okay, home range size for pet cats is about 3.6. And for the jungle cat, some colleagues in India tracked them with GPS trackers. They're using 605 hectares. So now we divide that up and we say, what's the impact? How many prey per cat, how many prey are each cats killing per area? And you can see, even though the wild predator is killing way more prey, way more mice, he's using such a big area that the impact per area is a lot less. And so from this, we can see that even the lazy cat is having twice the impact on any area than the wild cat, and the active cat is having even more. So, but it's not just that. So we can say, okay, cats are having more of an impact, but it can get a little bit worse because we know that cats can live at really high densities, right? Typically, neighborhoods are going to have way more cats than if it's a jungle cat, their density is going to be really low. So we conservatively said they have 2 times the density. It could be even more in some places. So then that makes that cats are on average having 4 to 10 times the ecological impact of a native predator. So that's kind of the bad news. The good news is this is going to be really concentrated near their houses, right? So they're not going out into nature preserves, but they are having a big impact on any animals that are near the house. So there are situations where maybe that's not too big of a concern. Maybe you've got really common birds and mammals, and you're not too concerned about what your cat does. But in other places, like along the beach where there's beach nesting birds, or places in California, or our colleagues worked in New Zealand where there were endangered species living right near houses, that's where we have the biggest concern. So we really need to focus our efforts to make sure people realize that their cats could be a really big threat to those particular species. So the easiest thing we can do is keep the cats indoors, right? Cats don't need to go outdoors to be happy, and keeping them indoors, or certainly dramatically restricting the amount of time they go outdoors, would really help this problem and would be good for the birds and for the small mammals and the lizards. Another reason to keep your cat indoors is in North America, we have coyotes all over the place. We got this picture last year in Duke Forest. And we get coyotes in my neighborhood here in North Raleigh. They're out there and they will kill cats. And so this is another reason that you might want to keep, not to mention the cars that cats sometimes get hit by cars. There's other risks to cats as well, but coyotes are another potential reason to keep your cat indoors. I have heard some people of using different bells or other things on their cats to try to prevent them from killing, help out the birds, make them realize that they're coming. And there's some evidence that some of these can work. I think this is an area that's worth looking at some more, because I do think you can see how grumpy these cats are. They do not like these collars, which must mean they're working. And so this is another alternative. I don't fully endorse it because I think keeping your cat indoors is better. But it'd be interesting to see, if your cat's bringing prey home, do an experiment. Get one of these collars and see if they bring home less prey. Maybe it will make a difference. Maybe you can let me know what you find out if you do this. So I want to just end by saying thanks, to my co-authors who are listed. So this is the name of our paper there, and you can see all those names at the beginning. Our collaborators in Australia and New Zealand, here in North Carolina, and the United Kingdom, who helped us do this work. I couldn't put all the citizen scientists because we had 925 cats, so it's hundreds and hundreds of people that helped us do this, and they got to see where their cat was going, so they kind of liked it, and we got to have this important information. So a huge thanks to that. We had a lot of help from NC State students on this project. This project is run by NC State students. Presently, we have a student named Jacob Hill who's working on Cat Tracker 2.0 with fancier cat tracking GPS devices that record in really high resolution where they go, and also allow us to see, hopefully, we're still experimenting, but hopefully see exactly where they're hunting. So we can see how much they're hunting, how much they're successful, how much they fail. These have 3-axis accelerometers built in that really let us see the behavior in detail. So we're testing these out right now, but this is where we're hoping to take the project next. And then thanks to the cats as well. And I'll mention, if you're interested in this, we have a video on the museum's SciPrime channel. So it's a YouTube channel where scientists explain the results of their research. You can see the most recent one here is killer cats, but there's some other cool work up there too about ants and eyes and galaxies and all kinds of cool things. So check that out if you want to share that with other people as well, or this live stream, this talk will be available online as well. So I think I can stop now. Thanks for coming, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Roland. Let's give him a round of applause. Cool stuff. So if you've got a question for Roland, wave at me, whether you're down here or up on the balconies. Just wave down. I'll bring you a microphone. That way everybody can hear. Thank you.
I'd like to know, did the boy cats catch more, or did the girl cats catch more?
They were pretty similar between that. We definitely had younger animals are more likely to hunt more and are more likely to move further. So there was, but it was a pretty weak correlation. A lot of young animals are still really lazy, but it was very rare that we had an old animal that would move far. So occasionally the young ones would move far, and there was a couple. We had a lot of animals, so we were able to look what's the tendency, on average. We didn't have very many animals that weren't neutered, but the ones that weren't neutered tended to move a little bit further. But if you remember that graph, almost all the animals moved less than 5 hectares. So there really wasn't much variation in movement. They were all moving, maybe they were moving 3 or 5, but that's still not very big a distance. The jungle cat was many hundreds of hectares.
You said that there were not as much variation in movement. Did you notice any variation by region, like were cats in England moving more than cats in New Zealand, or was it pretty similar across the world?
Very, very little. There was a slight tendency for the Australian cats to move less, but it wasn't a very big effect. And this is something we were interested in particular, because of the coyote effect. So I was thinking, if there's coyotes out there, those cats should be moving less, right? Because they're afraid of the coyotes, so they're not going to move as far. And so we were able to compare Australia and New Zealand and UK, which don't have coyotes, to North America, and there was no difference. The other thing that we were able to do was, in North America, there's no coyotes in Long Island, New York. It's like almost the only place in North America that doesn't have coyotes. And so we worked hard to recruit volunteers in Long Island, New York, to track their cats. And so we sent them the units, and they would track them and send them back to us, and we got a good sample there. And then we also worked with collaborators in Connecticut, out of the Bruce Museum, to track cats there, because that's a similar kind of habitat, right? Same weather, pretty developed area. And so we were able to directly compare Connecticut, where there's coyotes, and similar habitat to Long Island, where there's no coyotes, and there was no difference. So the cats, I think either they don't really notice the coyotes, or they're not moving very far anyway. I think we've done some other work with camera traps where we find that cats are very rare where coyotes roam. So like Umstead State Park here in North Carolina, or even Rock Creek Park in Washington, D.C., right in an urban area, there's almost no cats, as our camera traps show, but there's lots of coyotes. And so I think what we found, we've run cameras in the Greenway around here, and we get a couple cats, but I think basically they have to be able to run back and dive underneath the shed if a coyote shows up. And if they get too far away, they can't do that, then they're going to get in trouble.
I'm curious, what do you think about the relationships, because you mentioned coyotes and cats in North America, where we have coyotes. What about the relationships with other wild predators in the UK or in Australia?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in UK and Australia and New Zealand, they don't have very many wild predators. The biggest predator is the red fox, which we also have around here. And the red fox is kind of about the same size as a house cat. And so generally, the foxes and the cats just kind of leave each other alone as far as we can tell. And so that's one of the things is in Australia and New Zealand in particular, they have a big problem with feral cats, worse than we have here, because there are no predators. And the cat, so we weren't studying feral cats, we were studying pet cats. The feral cats are full on living off what they can kill. So they're eating a lot more, they're ranging over bigger areas. We know that they have had a devastating effect on many species in Australia, especially the small mammals, little marsupials and things like that the cats have either wiped out or really hurt. And that's because they don't have larger predators mostly. There's also in Australia, there's a dingo, which is kind of a long ago escaped dog. So it's kind of a feral dog, but it's been escaped. It's been on the land for thousands of years now, so it's kind of its own species. That's sort of controversial. And the relationship between dingoes and cats is not well understood, but it does seem like the cats might avoid the dingoes.
All right. Any others?
Any questions up there?
I guess you did a very good job.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for coming, and you can again check it out online if you want to read more, or we can chat afterwards. Great.
Thank you, Roland. Thanks everybody for tuning in and for joining us here in the Daily Planet. I hope you enjoyed the show and enjoy the rest of your visit to the Museum of Natural Sciences. Bye, everybody.